Celebrating 41 seasons on the air, Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Hello everyone, I'm Mike Russell.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks for joining us for a special feature edition of Farm Week. Over the next several weeks, two versions of the Farm Bill will be debated in Congress before anything is signed into law. The major part of both bills, the assistance millions of Americans receive to put food on the table, was also a topic of discussion for our five most recent Secretaries of Agriculture.
I now want to invite to come to the stage Secretary Tom Vilsack, Secretary Mike Johanns, Secretary Ann Veneman, Secretary Ed Schaefer, and Secretary Dan Glickman. Join me in welcoming them.
With experience spanning 3 administrations and 3 decades, 5 former U.S. Secretaries of Agriculture gathered in Des Moines, Iowa to discuss solutions for food insecurity at the World Food Prize-sponsored Iowa Hunger Summit.
Because I still contend most people don't want to be on these programs. Most people want to get off of them as fast as they can.
The biggest talking points surrounded the program with the biggest budget in the USDA, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Starting as food stamps when Henry Wallace was Agriculture Secretary, the program has evolved into a system helping those with food insecurities, providing job training, and to assist people gain self-sufficiency. In 2016, the USDA Food and Nutrition Service notes SNAP served 44.2 million people per month at an annual price tag of almost $67 billion. Critics of the program say the unlimited food choices in SNAP have led to a system of dependency on the federal government. The ability for participants to purchase almost whatever food they want made SNAP a public enemy when it comes to the problem of obesity in the country. According to the Center for Disease Control, more than 1/3 of adults have obesity. Ann Veneman, who was President George W. Bush's first Ag Secretary, called for restricting food choices in SNAP to focus on healthier selections. These actions could help curb government spending on healthcare-related issues in the future.
We're paying for this as taxpayers in Medicaid, in Medicare, if people aren't putting the right food in their bodies, we're paying it in diseases such as heart disease, diabetes. All of the non-communicable diseases are much more prevalent where we have greater obesity. The SNAP program, we've changed it to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. We should be talking much more about nutrition and not just hunger, because nutrition is really the key word.
Secretary Mike Johanns, who also served under President George W. Bush, warned restrictions and SNAP benefits aren't going to fix the problem completely.
I tend to be of the school that says, look, a certain amount of restriction, yeah, it's appropriate, but if you think you're going to solve this problem with a total restriction approach, you're not. You have to build in an educational approach that has a broader base to it than what we're doing today and actually give people good information on how to make good decisions about family diet. But here's the problem. You have people who are able-bodied, and can they make it all work on minimum wage? And the answer to that is probably not.
Individuals receiving SNAP ballooned 42% in President Obama's first 4 years in office before shrinking 7% in his last 4. Tom Vilsack was secretary during that entire time and adds an update is in order.
It also presupposes that people who are receiving SNAP consume around 20 pounds of beans a week. No one consumes 20 pounds of beans a week. So it begs to be reviewed And I think if it were to be reviewed and aligned with food prices as they are today, you would probably see the need for not fewer dollars, but more dollars in the program.
President George W. Bush's third Ag Secretary and former North Dakota Governor Ed Schaefer praised efforts at the local level, such as food pantries and farmers markets, for food education, and that ongoing research can be a crucial tool.
I mean, there's a lot of research going on that we need to fund and continue to support in changing the Americans' diet.
Despite the differences in how federal assistance programs should work, one point the 5 secretaries agreed on is if the Farm Bill and the SNAP program were pulled into 2 separate bills, neither would pass on Capitol Hill.
Do you think it's a good idea to divide and separate the nutrition programs from the farm support programs? Yes or no on a farm bill, future farm bill?
No.
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 Okay, that's unanimous.
For Market to Market, I'm John Torpy.
The Senate version of the Farm Bill contains a forestry provision that pays for, among other things, reducing the fuel that threatens towns, local industries, and lives. Earlier this year, Congress approved the Wildfire Disaster Funding Act, designed to prevent the USDA's fire service from having to raid non-fire programs to pay for firefighting. Here's Colleen Bradford-Krantz with that story.
8,500 firefighters from around the country worked in December of 2017 to battle Southern California's now infamous Thomas Fire. The blaze devastated nearly 282,000 acres to become the state's largest wildfire in modern history. Talbot Hayes, a Forest Service District Fire Management Officer from Alpine, California, traveled 200 miles north to join those battling the massive fire, which ultimately destroyed more than 1,000 homes and businesses, as well as taking 2 lives. A month later, Hayes returned home and continued his forest management work to simplify battling wildfires in his assigned district inside the Cleveland National Forest.
The time to fight tomorrow's fire is in the winter through prescribed burning and fuels management practices.
The almost automatic response to wildfires for decades had been to put them out immediately. Greater awareness of the positive and rejuvenating effects of natural fires in forest and prairie regions brought about a shift in strategies to allow fires in more remote areas of the country to burn longer. But in heavily populated regions where lives and buildings are at risk, Hayes says there are few such opportunities to just let it burn.
Well, down here in Southern California, the strategies pretty much stayed the same, and we try to suppress all fires due to the values at risk. The amount of people that live down here, the infrastructure in the area, doesn't allow to try to manage a fire. It's more full suppression. There are other regions that have a lot more wilderness and areas that are further away from values at risk, communities, and those areas can have slightly different strategies.
The 2018 fire season is expected to be a tough one, as many regions are already tinder dry. New Mexico and Colorado have already faced large catastrophic wildfires that broke out before the traditional start of the fire season.
We had engines that were sent to Colorado in March this year, which is very uncommon for Colorado to be having fires in March. We're not getting as much rain as we're used to getting. We're in a dry spell. Our local mountains aren't getting near the snowpack that they used to receive. And so the vegetation is a lot drier. The reservoirs don't have as much water. All this contributes to a busier, longer, more devastating fire season.
According to Hayes, most wildfires in Southern California are started by humans rather than by lightning. A spark from a dragging trailer chain or a mower hitting a rock may start a grass fire in the heat of summer.
Just be safe.
Jay Eyre, Cleveland National Forest campground host at Mile 26 on the Pacific Crest Trail, says hikers need to be aware of fire conditions and comply with fire prevention rules along the route. Campfires are prohibited outside designated campgrounds, and permits are required to use certain types of camp stoves along the 2,659-mile trail that runs from Mexico to just over the Canadian border.
They need to stop immediately if there's fire in the area.
Air, a retired school teacher from Montana, says his home state also had a rough fire season last year.
Last year was a big fire in western Montana mainly. A lot of Montana is in high fire danger just because of the climate change and the warm temperatures, lower snow levels we're seeing. And a few years ago there was a huge infest of bark beetles. Those are a lot of dead and down trees that are creating a lot of fuel to burn in Montana.
It's those kind of dead and downed trees, as well as forest undergrowth, that are particularly concerning for Hayes and his crews. Their answer is to cut and mow underbrush, create fire breaks, and use prescribed burns in certain high-risk areas.
We try to treat between 4,000 and 5,000 acres every winter through fuels management. Good fires do prevent bad fires.
Community defense breaks are typically 300-foot wide bands that create a barrier between the national forest and communities on its edge. It takes a crew of 20 several days to cut and gather the brush in these defense breaks. But Hayes says it increases the odds for successfully protecting a town if a wildfire reaches the area.
We try to cut out a lot of the vegetation, especially the dead vegetation and the more flammable vegetation, and in order to just reduce the intensity of the fire as it comes into the fuel break area to give us a better chance of actually stopping the fire.
The locations for prescribed burns are selected based on how much wood and vegetation, aka fuel, is present, as well as how long the area has gone without a fire. The hope is that taking away a portion of the fuel will reduce the intensity of any wildfires that do occur.
This side of the hand line that we're standing on has never been treated. It's never been prescribed burned or thinned in any way, and you can see the heavy accumulation of ground fuels, and you can see how devastating a wildfire in the summer would be if it were to start in this area. Now this side over here, this area was thinned, it was broadcast burned. If there were to be a wildfire start in this area, the fire would be very low intensity. We'd be able to get in here and keep the fire smaller.
The federal government reported it spent a record $2.9 billion on suppressing fires in 2017. And the outlook for the current year is bleak, as many regions are expected to become dangerously dry. Firefighters will continue their work to reduce the size of the fires that will inevitably happen this year.
It's not if, it's when we get the next fire.
For Market to Market, I'm Colleen Bradford-Krantz.
Thanks to unusual weather earlier this year, we were treated to a floral display that just doesn't happen every year. This week, Extension horticulturist Gary Bachman tells us about the yucca plant and its somewhat elusive floral umbrella.
A plant I remember from my growing up years in Michigan is yucca. You won't be surprised that this plant is also right at home here in Mississippi. Yucca can give the impression of being a rough and tough plant. Botanically speaking, yucca features a basal rosette of rigid, sword-shaped, spine-tipped leaves, up to 30 inches long and 4 inches wide. A very descriptive common name for yucca is Spanish dagger. It's really easy to get stabbed by these leaves. I know from experience. Typically, these leaves are a bright to olive green, but I really like the variegated yucca. These grow in a clump up to 4 feet tall. The variegated leaves are a bluish green with gold transitioning to creamy white margins. In late spring, a tall flower stalk can emerge from the center of each clump of leaves. These stalks can be up to 8 feet tall. The nodding bell-shaped flowers are creamy white and form a massive terminal panicle on the stalk. There have been reports of yucca flowering more than what is typically observed this year. I believe this is a result of the extreme cold temperatures we experienced in our Mississippi gardens earlier this winter. Yucca should be grown in the full sun for the best growth and flowering. These plants are right at home growing in the edges of wooded areas, but also fit in well right in the front yard. Yucca plants are quite drought tolerant. In fact, if you forget to water from time to time, they'll be okay. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman, and I'll see you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a short break here, but coming up in our final feature segment, it's a golf course unlike any you've ever seen. A private course on a family farm with a story that stretches back decades. Have you ever seen a 5,700-yard course with 18 tee boxes but only 3 greens? You'll see one coming up on Farmweek. We'll be right back.
Our tradition of learn by doing is creating new opportunities. My 4-H is involved with service projects in communities all across our state.
We develop leaders for Mississippi's future.
My 4-H is science and technology, everything from computers and robotics to exploring our environment.
My 4-H promotes active lifestyles and encourages physical fitness, healthy foods, and nutrition.
My 4-H is Mississippi 4-H.
Welcome back. Before we continue, let's take a look at the Farm Week calendar. First, it's the 2018 4-H Cow Camp in Starkville, Mississippi. This is for all 4-Hers thinking about showing cattle. You'll learn about grooming and fitting, proper nutrition for cows and calves, and about detecting and preventing common diseases. Registration is $100 per attendee and includes a lunch and 2 dinners. The fee must be received by Saturday, June 30th. For information, call Dr. Amanda Stone at 662-769-9941. Next, July 19th through 21st, the 20th Annual Southern Peanut Growers Conference at the Sandestin Resort at Miramar Beach, Florida. The conference is for peanut growers in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi. This year's theme is Opportunities in Change, focusing on growth in the industry overall. Registration is $145, which includes all conference events and meals. For more information, including activities and conference sessions, visit southernpeanutfarmers.org. Now, check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot. And finally, on the lighter side, and perfect for this time of year, a story about a golf course on a farm with 18 tee boxes but only 3 greens. Here's Farm Week's Jonathan Parrish with the story.
Down an unassuming road between Jackson and Vicksburg, Mississippi, there is a place that at first glance makes people announce out loud with bewilderment. That's a golf course. Yes, it is a golf course. More specifically, it's the Halifax Holes. You won't find Halifax Holes listed in any golf magazines as one of the top places to play in the state, and a quick search of the internet doesn't reveal much information either. But make no mistake, this is a special place to many people. Halifax Holes is the brainchild of Ted Kendall III. Kendall is the former president of Gaddis Farms, a position his son Ted Kendall IV now has. Gaddis Farms is a 20,000-acre operation and produces livestock, cotton, soybeans, and corn. The area of the farm where the golf course sits was once a mule lot. The mules were used by employees of Gaddis Farms to herd livestock and perform various other jobs. As technology advanced and the mules were phased out, Ted Kendall didn't necessarily know what he would do with the now vacant land. And then one Sunday in the late 60s, Kendall went to play golf with his wife, and a passion for a game he had never played before was born.
After a few years of marriage, and she was still trying to play, one Sunday afternoon she asked me to go play golf with her, and I said, well, I'll go, but I'm not going to hit a ball, and I'd rather be napping. And so on the first tee, I said, let me try to hit one, and I hit a ball, and we never found it. And but from that day, I got the bug. I never was any good. I took lessons. I hid clubs in the back of my pickup truck and would go sneak around and take a lesson here, there, and yonder, but it never did much good.
Although Ted Kendall's passion for the game grew, it was still quite a leap to go from just beginning a sport to building your own golf course. It's a leap Dennis Mason, an employee of Gaddis Farms for over 50 years, remembers well.
Look, it was a strange thing. I think Mr. Ted, what happened back years ago is in 70 or 69, between 69 and 70, he went to Raymond one Sunday afternoon, he was going to play golf. And he couldn't hardly get out there. And it took him 5 or 6 hours to play 18 holes. When he came home, he decided, you know, I believe I'll build my own golf course and I can play when I want to. You know, and I think that's how it all got started, you know, back years ago.
With a firm vision in place for what would now go on the former mule lot, Kendall and his neighbor began designing and building the course. But it wasn't long before they ran into a problem. The course just wasn't long enough to hit long irons and drivers.
As soon as we got them built, we realized we needed to be able to hit a long ball. So we looked across the road and we were mowing a pretty good yard over there, and so we went away and built a green right in front of that house. But that was the beginning.
In 1970, the course opened for play. There were 3 greens and the course measured around 4,400 yards, with a county road going through the middle of the course. It quickly became a unique hangout spot and afforded employees of Gaddis Farms and others in the area the opportunity to be introduced to a game they may have never otherwise played.
You know, there's a lot of people that'd be just like me. I mean, I couldn't afford to go to a country club, join a country club and play. If it hadn't been for this golf course, I probably wouldn't be playing, I never would have played golf. And I'm just one of the many that he has helped.
Of course, the newly built Halifax holes needed maintenance and upkeep. Ted Kendall turned to Mississippi State University for advice and answers to his questions. A plan was put into place and some used equipment was rounded up. Current Gaddis Farms employees were given responsibilities as far as the upkeep of the course.
You know, we get it done with the help that does a lot of other things. There's no full-time golf course person. We call on all volunteers of all kinds, Dennis and Robert Mason and a lot of other folks to help get it done.
It takes one person about 2 days a week to keep the fairways and greens cut, but the maintenance of the course is constant. Keeping greens and fairway mowers in working order is a big part of the course upkeep. As Dennis Mason says, there is always something to do to the golf course.
I have put laid sod and fertilizer greens and punch of greens and all of that good stuff, you know, that people don't really know anything about except us, you know. But it's a good bit of work goes into a golf course to make it look like this one.
Back in the year 2000, after its first 30 years, the Halifax Holes course needed a remodel. Equipment had gotten better and golfers had gotten stronger. The course wasn't long enough, and it became apparent after a few close calls and a few broken windshields that a county road no longer needed to be in the middle of the course.
I hit a ball one day that bounced short and danced up in a dump truck and went on down the road. I mean, and we hit a few cars, but they were mostly neighbors and friends, so we never had any problem. And we did finally get it shut down.
The decision was made to clear trees, extend the course, and add another green. The change increased the yardage of the 3-green course to over 5,700 yards. There are 2 par 5s that measure over 500 yards each. However, the changes to the course weren't universally loved.
A lot of the golfers out here who had played the old course for so long, they got kind of upset because they said we ruined it, we made it too hard. But it became more like a golf course.
It became apparent early on that the course could be used to help some local organizations in the area by hosting benefit tournaments. Halifax Holes is now the site of tournaments benefiting the Boy Scouts, a local private school, Hines Community College, and Clinton's high school baseball team, among many others. In 2016, it's estimated the various tournaments raised over $26,000 for the organizations. As the course has evolved over the years, there is another Kendall getting into the game of golf, and specifically into the golf course. Mr. Ted's grandson, Whit Kendall, moved into the house across the road, revamped the old green the course once used, and turned it into a practice area. Whit says he is happy with the decision his grandfather made years ago to put a golf course on part of the farmland.
It's just unique because, I mean, if you look at it compared to the other ground, if you just put a fence up around it, and, you know, let cattle on it, I mean, it would look just like, you know, the rest of the farm within a couple of months. So it's just unique that that's kind of what he wanted to do with this piece of ground. And I just think it's awesome that it's just carried on through the years, and it's definitely something that I want to keep the tradition going. And it does raise a lot of money for other people, and I mean, I've had tons of good memories out here. I know other people have too, so it's just a lot of fun.
One of the many unique things about the Halifax holes is when they have a tournament, it truly is a shotgun start. And they're off. From the best kept secret in golf, I'm Jonathan Parrish reporting.
Great story. Nothing like owning your own golf course.
That's right, even in hot weather like we're experiencing right now. Well, next week there can sometimes be a bit of tension between beekeepers and farmers. And in our next program, we all know that bees are important to agriculture, but farmers' pesticides can cause them harm and minimize their effectiveness.
That's why a special program designed to foster better communication between row crop farmers and beekeepers was created, with a tour built in to reach more of both. The result is a program drawing national attention. That's next time on Farm Week. Remember, if you missed a story, you can find past episodes of Farm Week at msuext.ms/farmweek. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. A true shot.